The Blues are lost away from ending their season.
No, they're not. Let's not forget, Martin, they were the width of a goalpost away from winning that game. When you consider the way those people inflicted themselves on the World Cup final, and then you get a situation like that where they described it as a tackle.
Yeah.
The ball was nowhere near it. He
Right.
launched himself head first. I did see one fantastic comment last week where a guy said, God, just imagine how good the Aussies would be if you took another 3 teams away from them.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Super Rugby Round 5. What a fantastic start to the competition. So good that our very special guest every Monday, Tony Johnson from Sky Sport, reckons it's the best start he's ever seen to any Super Rugby season. And we're going to go into that in a second. I'm going to start you with a 7-pointer, 7 quick questions, all right? Are the Crusaders back to being the Crusaders again?
I think so. Yep. There's a couple of things about it. Firstly, I think Rob Penny's second year in the job. Obviously, last year perhaps didn't press all the right buttons. I think he had some injury issues that he had to confront. Last year, and it was his turn. But also, I think they've freshened the team up a bit. There were some players who served them for a long time. They've moved on. And so there's a slightly younger look, just a slightly younger look about the team this year. But no question, the last 2 weeks in the sunshine in Canterbury, they have played really, really well. They play Eden Park this week against the Blues.
Well, that's my second question.
Up to second place in the competition. I think we can safely say that they are definitely contenders. Whether they're favourites yet, I still think it's too early to making any of those sorts of predictions.
The Blues are lost away from ending their season.
No, they're not. At the moment, they're only 3 points out of the 6. And by the way, 6 out of 11, it's better than 8 out of 14.
Yes, it is.
But,
yes.
Your target is the top 6, I think, unless you're setting the pace right at the top. The problem for them is that they've got a bye coming up. They've played one more game than some of the teams. I think there's about 3-4 of the teams up above them. And so they play the Crusaders this week at Eden Park. Then they have the bye. Then they play the Hurricanes at Eden Park. Now, it's not often you get even a month into the season and they haven't won a game at Eden Park. They're 0 for 2.
Yeah, good point.
I don't think they can afford to drop certainly both of those games. They need to win at least one of them, probably 2. And then you take into account the bye. I think we get a better idea of where they are after that Hurricanes game.
Okay.
If they can't win either of those games, and I think probably it is going to be too hard for them, but I just too early to be saying that. They'll have Beauden Barrett back. Remember, he'll probably be back for that Hurricanes game.
Well, question 3 was going to be, will that loss happen this Saturday night, home the Crusaders?
Well, it's just set up for another barnstormer, isn't it? There are things.
They have to be so desperate, Tony. They've just got to come with everything, don't they? The Blues and the Crusaders, have been sitting sulking about this for a year, haven't they?
Yeah.
They don't need the motivation. We can kill your season just about if we beat you.
Yeah, the thing about the Crusaders, they're not the complete article yet. They've still got a few things to solve. I mean, they did leak some points at the weekend. The game just really opened up and they conceded 4 tries. And at one stage, it did look like they were trying to win the game in multiples of 5. They couldn't kick a conversion for a while, but those are things that they're fixables. The Blues, I think, have got more pressing issues. Obviously, the injuries, and we talked about it in the past. People straight away say, it's not an excuse. Well, I think it's a reason.
It was. Hey, how many people gave the Crusaders the slack last year when they couldn't field their team because of injuries? It's just what it is, though, isn't it?
It's a fact of life.
Yeah.
But when you're going that deep into your squad, obviously it does become an issue. But look, the things that they have to sort out, they are fixable, but they're fairly significant. Their set piece faltering at key times in a game, I think that's definitely something, like we saw it against the Brumbies. It was the scrum. They've had the odd line out throw.
This was the line outs,
I think probably that the area of most concern is that they haven't yet sorted out their support play at the breakdown, because they are conceding important turnovers at times in the game, crucial stages in the game. But look, let's not forget, Martin, they were the width of a goalpost away from winning that game in Hamilton. A fantastic game of rugby it was. Young Xavier Taylor, they entrusted him with the goal kicking. And later in the game, the feeling is that Stephen Petalfetta, having been out for so long, just wasn't quite ready to assume that. So the young man stepped up very bravely and almost successfully nailed that conversion, and it would have been a distinctly different look to the table if it had gone over.
But having said that, Highlanders, same thing, had a couple of chances against the Hurricanes, to win that game, didn't get the kicks. And you could also say that dodgy scrum penalty that the Hurricanes conceded against the Blues. They could be 0-5 right now.
And
that's how close it could be.
Yeah.
They could be 3-2. They could be 0-5.
Well, you could probably talk about that in any game. I mean, you go back, you talk about the Highlanders Hurricanes game, which was a tight, thrilling contest of a different sort. Perhaps not quite. There were some lovely flamboyant touches. Caleb Tangitau, for example, the heads up play. Firstly, the intercept, then the tap and go, the kick downfield. We haven't seen that really before from him. That was great heads up play. You get to the end of the game, they've certainly bashing down the door or trying to bash down the door of the Hurricanes, and their defence held up pretty well. But there was a high shot in there that was missed. Peter Umaga Jensen on Caleb Tangitau. Another day that could have been picked up. It was a difficult shot at goal if it had been a penalty kick or a line out downfield. Little margins like that, separating teams in a lot of these games. So, that was a good win for the Hurricanes because the Highlanders have been going along pretty well.
Either of those teams capable of winning this competition, or do you think making the top six is as good as it gets for the H and the H?
Well, I think once you get into the top six, anything's possible. So I think they are both contenders. They're sort of hovering around that the fringe or the cusp, the inside, 6, 7, the 5, outside, 6, 7, 8, of the top. So they're going to need to win, consecutive games at some stage of the season. But at the moment, if I'm brutally honest, I still think the Chiefs are the team to beat.
Okay.
I think I said
I'm going to argue about that with you in a second.
Before the season started, I thought the Blues had a good chance at defending. Not quite so convinced at this point. But to me, the Chiefs are now the team to beat. But I think you get yourself, and we've seen it, the NRL. One year, the Warriors scraped in last qualifier, beat the Melbourne Storm. Yeah, that can happen. That's knockout football.
Results over the weekend were all out whack. I mean, in a Rooster side getting belted by 50, turn around and put 38 points on Penrith. The beauty of that competition. Look, I'll argue right now because in terms of the Chiefs, after the first couple of weeks, I thought this team is light years ahead of everyone else, and they seem to have it reserve in the tank, and they just seem to be able to do everything right, all the facets of the game they had under control. They then go to Fiji, and they weren't that convincing. They dropped off in the last 20 minutes, but they just didn't play as well. And then against the Blues, they didn't play as well. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at this Chiefs side going, hang on a second. Are you as good as what I thought you would? Or is this part of the competition that you're going to win games when you don't play as well as you can?
Well, I think what's really good about Super Rugby this year is that you have to bring your best game every week. Doesn't matter who you're playing. I mean, it beggars belief, really, that actually on Saturday night going into it was top v bottom.
Oh, crazy.
I mean, that's just a quirk perhaps of the competition.
And it's a one-pointer.
And it's a one-pointer in the end. It could have just as easily gone the other way. No, but when your ability to tough out wins like that, to win at Eden Park, to beat a desperate Blues side by 1 point in a game like that, those are the things that make championship teams. As you know from back many years ago when Manchester United were a good team. Yeah. The number of times a 1-0 win over Bournemouth in a way.
Absolutely, mate.
It's good as a 3-0.
Those 3 points are what gets you the title at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
many years ago.
Many years ago.
Yeah.
But you're talking about this Chiefs side, and look, I'm boldly saying that I put the Crusaders in my form rankings at the top because I think that right now they're the best side to watch in the competition. And Macca Springer, we can't go past mentioning that guy. Look, how many tries? I remember 5-try Francis Mealy for the Warriors. That sticks in my head because it's very rare that anyone gets a fiver or a fiver in a game of rugby, don't they, Tony? And he did it in the league, obviously, for the Warriors. I can't remember. Has anyone scored 5 tries?
Yeah, and it's a player that we remember very fondly, Sean Wainui. He did it in Australia, and he gave that fantastic interview after the game, and we all remember him, because of that. Because there's about I don't know how many. I think it's over 10 players have scored 4.
Oh, okay, right.
So to get 5,
And one of those tries where he kicks it, runs around outside the field of play, because in the NFL, you're out at that stage.
Yeah.
The play's over. But of course in rugby you can actually do that. That was genius as well.
Yeah.
And also the smile on Sevu Reese's face at the end of it, which I just thought was hilarious as well. He was loving it as well.
Yeah, and they're giving them plenty of opportunities. And Springer's one of those guys. He's quite a character. He's still quite a young player. but he's got confidence in himself, and at the moment that is a fantastic back three, and obviously Sevu Reece. I did, as I say, if you put Macca Springer in your fantasy rugby team, you are a genius.
Yes,
I've got Sevu Reece in mine, and Will Jordan. What I'm liking about Will Jordan this year, Martin, is that he's touching the ball a lot. But it's not just about what I can do with the ball in hand. He is passing the ball a lot. He's being used sometimes as a first receiver.
Yep.
He has brought another dimension to his game. Early on it was just give him the ball
and let him go.
And just watch him smoking the opposition. Right. So now that dimension, that's really added something.
Exciting for the All Blacks, that is, eh?
Well,
do you know what it is,
is,
Tony? I call it the Ben Smith. I just think he's developed those aspects to his game.
Yeah.
Because the great thing about Ben was that he was always able to do exactly that.
Yeah.
Put somebody else in, just create gaps for somebody else.
Yeah.
If we've got a guy with that much speed that can do that for the All Blacks, that's just going to be terrific.
The thing about Bender, to me, was just the fact that he looked like a guy. You imagine playing bull rush against him. You just never get him, would you? There's just so many.
Yeah, but you think you would.
So many different ways. How many ways can you beat someone?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and look, so I think that the Crusaders, as I say, they've just freshened up a bit, and also some of their role players, which has always been a really important part of Crusaders rugby. It's you've got your rock stars, you've got your All Blacks. Antonio Chalfoun, who's had a lot of injury problems, some health issues that he's had to deal with, getting regular rugby. What a terrific role he's playing in that team as well. They've got some depth. Yeah, look, I think they're definitely...
I'm just wrapped for Rob Penny, man, because I like Rob Penny.
Yeah,
and
same.
And all the stuff he went through last year. And look, and also the swearing thing and all of that. Look, it's all part of it. That's under pressure. That's what happens when you're under load and things. To see now this team, I know that they won't be getting ahead of themselves. I'm getting ahead of them at the moment because I just think if they continue to play like this, the thing with them is it's confidence, man. If they continue to get these kind of scores, to beat teams like that, their confidence is just growing, and you can see it growing and growing. They'll tighten up the areas you're talking about defensively, and that they'll tighten, because that's what Crusader rugby is. They'll shut you down. But if they can attack like that and continue to do it for the next weeks, the Reds now confirmed as the best side in Oz. They don't play the Brumbies till round 9, but from what you saw against New South Wales.
What I saw was a team that were bitterly disappointed in their performance in Christchurch. I think they expected a lot more out of themselves than they gave. They were just steamrolled, and they wouldn't have been happy about that. And so they turned that around. They've certainly pricked the bubble of the Waratahs. It was a convincing win. The one question mark about them now, I think over the last few years, Fraser McWright, in terms of that classic fetcher, open side, jackal type player, I think he has been quite outstanding amongst the very best, if not the best, over the ball in Super Rugby. It's something that every team needs. And you think about, guys like something, obviously, go back to Pocock and McCaw, but Sam Cane could do it. Mm-hmm. Patrick Tuipulotu is another one who's really good at doing it. Duplessis Kirifi at the moment is just absolutely fantastic at doing their ability to win a crucial breakdown, turnover or penalty at an important stage of the game. Artie Savir, of course, another one. McWright is that for the Reds, and I think they lose him to that shoulder injury for any length of time. That puts a bit of a dent in their aspirations.
Good call.
And a bit of a worry for Joe Schmidt, because to me, I'd see him as a key man in the squad against the Lions.
Or does the title of best Australian team get handed out when they do play the Brumbies? Because the Brumbies are a bit of an enigma still to me. They were really comfy against the Drua at home, winning that game. And then they've also won at Eden Park, and that was a real tough out game, and you could see what that meant to them. They've also won in Fiji. They're their 3 wins, but they've lost 2 games, and so those 2 losses kind of temper how good are they?
Well, you never quite, and Stephen Larkham was the great enigma as a player, isn't it? You never quite knew what he was going to do next. In fact, he was probably the only person on the planet who knew what he was going to do next.
Player,
look, they're always going to be thereabouts. I think the thing with the Australian teams is that it's great to see that they've started well, because they have injected. I mean, you think of all the factors that have gone into making this such a good start to the Super Rugby season. The close results, the upsets, speeding everything up, the refereeing, the weather. Absolutely, all of those things. But the better performances, the better standards set by the Australians, absolutely has contributed to that. I did see one fantastic comment last week where a guy said, God, just imagine how good the Aussies would be if you took another 3 teams away from them.
Well, remember when they did have 3 teams in, and it was 5 from South Africa and 5 from us. Hang on, that's not Super 12, is it? So four from South Africa.
Yeah.
Sorry. They were really, all of those teams were really competitive.
Yeah.
That was the truth of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Brumbies were always a surprise early on in the 96-97 period and then they started winning titles because we always thought New South Wales and Queensland were the traditional rugby rivals for provincial rugby for New Zealand, weren't
and
they?
the Brumbies, of course, were born out of offcasts.
Yeah, they were.
Or outcasts and offshoots or flotsam and jetsam or whatever, and just created a dynasty.
They did.
And that
people forget that. People think that they were always there. They weren't.
No, that chip on their shoulder, which I think drove them a lot. But look, the amazing players that they produced in that time. So you'll always have to respect them for that. They deserved an extra team. They earned the right for an extra team, but I think 5, that was too many. So what we've got now, I think, is a much better balance, and I think they're profiting from that.
Tony, before we get on to, because I'm going to ask you about Roigard and Godfrey, because I'm just loving this combination, man. And I look at the World Cup in 2027 and think, my God, if these two guys, injury permitting, everything, they're just getting better and better. They work that combination together. But just going back to what you said right at the very start about how good the Super Comp has been. Now, we all want it to be good. Your role is also, as commentator for Sky Sport as well, is to promote this competition. So that comes naturally anyway. But I just don't think anyone can sit there and look at it after 5 weeks. After 1 week, we said, God, that was a great opening round. 2 weeks, what a fantastic couple of weeks. 3 weeks, 5 weeks, we're still saying this, right?
Yeah.
And it deserves to be said because it is. It is providing entertainment every week. When you talked about the Hurricanes game and the Highlanders game, that's not a fantastic game of rugby to watch, but the scoreline kept it close and it became a really compelling game of rugby to watch. Then you get the Chiefs and the Blues, which was a really good game to watch, right? And then, New South Wales and as far as Queensland had that history to it, which made me want to watch that game as well. And every week, I remember over the last couple of years, I'd be on the radio saying, God, there's not that many games this weekend that are compelling to watch.
Yep.
I'm looking at it now, genuinely saying these are compelling games, and I'm looking forward to this weekend coming.
Yeah, well, I mean, I drove back from Hamilton Saturday night, and I was really looking forward to, because I recorded the game, sitting down and watching that, the game from Australia straight afterwards. And look, just getting back to that sort of the positive side, my whole thing is that I just really like to accentuate the positive. There are some games where you can't deny that
you get the odd turd. That's okay.
Yeah,
I mean, that happens. Every comp
and you
gets
can't dress that up. You can't put lipstick on a pig. But but I think it's really nice to have a year where every single game, even if it's not the most exhilarating or spectacular, skillful contest, it's still a tight battle.
Yeah.
And those can be great games. So, long may that continue. I think. We've got another big weekend coming up. Every weekend there's, it's not just looking forward to one game.
No,
it's
3 or 4 games. And Roigard and Godfrey, let's talk about these guys.
Yep.
The future 9-10 combo for the All Blacks. Now, there are going to be other names that come into this, but, I've always been sitting there over the last few years and with Razor saying publicly he wanted to go after Mo'unga, which means he's not absolutely confident with the 2 guys that he's got. That's not happening now. We have to look at 2027. How old is Beauden Barrett going to be? Is Damien McKenzie going to be a utility player or what? These guys, Roigard was always the next cab off the rank after Aaron Smith. That was always going to happen, right? But Godfrey, who you picked right at the start of the season, I'm liking the fact that these 2 guys are playing together, and the more that they play together, you think another half dozen games, 10 games for the Hurricanes this year, another season next year, then we get into 2027. If Harry Godfrey stays injury-free, he's a lock, I think, for the end-of-year tour. He has to be. But your thoughts on that combo, what are you liking?
Well, first of all, just in terms of the options there, look, Beauden Barrett was looking $1 million until he went off at Eden Park last week. To me, showing I want that All Black number 10 jersey. McKenzie has been outstanding. They started off with him at fullback. He's moved back into 10 now that Sean Stevenson's back. And how about that pass round the back for a moment of the weekend? So there are 2 guys. They're the incumbents. Stephen Petalfeta, of course, he's had some injury problems, but he's got silky skills. So where you put Harry Godfrey, we know that Harry Plummer's leaving. He did a really solid job for the Blues, which, catapulted him
Can't
into
be underestimated.
a lot of people's good books.
That's what got him his contract.
Yeah. Harry Godfrey, he's still learning about the job, the week in, week out job of running the cutter. He's outside a fantastic halfback who gives him good service. He's got good players around him. And it's just about keeping the standard up week in, week out. Put a couple out on the full on Saturday, little things like that.
Sure.
And those are the things that you learn from.
But I'm looking long term at this guy.
Yeah, don't forget, and Richie Mo'unga will probably be back on the scene by then as well. So it's not like we're necessarily looking for a new player, someone who's not there now, because I think at least a few of those guys will still be around. But if he keeps progressing, it's certainly he's one to watch, and of course great having Ruben Love back there too, because they both play quite similar. They're both very brave.
Well, this is what we've got: young attacking players who are playing with real energy and intent and fear. You mentioned last week a lack of fear about the way that they play, and. I just think there's exciting prospects. If I'm Scott Robertson watching it every weekend, I've got a big notepad and I'm writing names down and ticking things off. And let's finish on the Six Nations then. Chris is going to cover it obviously for us. But that French side, very lucky to be 4-15 on the field there. They could have got lost a guy and perhaps should have lost a guy.
Lucky?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not even the word for it,
Okay,
Martin.
so he should have gone.
Absurd. Because when you consider the way those people inflicted themselves on the World Cup final, as if they were trying to, they weren't even at the stadium. They were at Roland Garros making these decisions about who stayed on, who went off. This, as I often described it as a forensic quest for things that people have done wrong, and then you get a situation like that where they described it as a tackle.
Yeah,
the ball was nowhere near it. He
right.
launched himself head first. So I think that was an absolute travesty that he wasn't red carded immediately, and they still have the red card. They have the 20-minute red, but they also have the full red for a really egregious piece of play.
Well,
where the player
that's what it's for.
Yeah, which and I would have thought a flying headbutt would be one of those.
Well, but when you heard the guy Marius, I think it was, wasn't it?
Marius, yeah. I don't even think that Marius. I don't think he made the ultimate decision, though. I think they referred it to the bunker. I don't know whether it was him or whether it was whether they actually have a.
And why don't they front and explain this afterwards? Wouldn't that be so much better?
Well,
if they
it would be, but. Look, and Scotland put up a brave performance, but there's no question. France, they are the best team in Europe at the moment.
What are we going to see when they come down
here? Anyone not involved in their final, any international players, we probably won't see them. They'll still send a strong team. They've got the strongest league in the world at the moment, the French. So it'll still be a strong team. I think, I hope they come down here with the right attitude, because I think we'll still get a good series out of them. At the end of the day, it'll still be New Zealand, France.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it says, yeah. When they run out onto the pitch.
Yeah, and look, they did it the weekend. In the end, it was almost anticlimactic.
When Scotland scored that try just before half-time and went into the lead, and then it was ruled out. He just felt just the wind came out of it.
Sucked the oxygen out of it a bit,
It just did, didn't it? Because all of that momentum, and I just thought, never mind.
Scotland, they were brave. England, I don't know how much you can read into that win over Wales, because Wales are just such a desperate state at the moment. But having said that, it was a really good Six Nations championship.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And in the end, I think Ireland are going to be the ones who are navel-gazing the most here.
Yeah, because obviously some of their senior guys have moved on, or they're, real old the veterans, the Conor Murrays, Cian Healy, O'Mahony, guys like that, and they are legends. They're an Irish rugby folklore, those guys, so they're going to be hard. Their presence in the team, even if their contributions have probably, just dialed off a wee bit in the last few years, they'll be hard to replace, and that's going to be the big question mark, is what have they got to come into their place? We've seen Prendergast, a very talented player, but he's not yet anything like a Johnny Sexton influence on the team. So that's going to be the hard thing for them. France, I can see just going on, continuing to be strong. They are massive in their forward pack. They've just got role players. They say to their locks, these 20 stone or 125 kg locks or whatever, your job is not to, throw passes out the back door or, sidestep or kick downfield or anything like that. Your job is to move bodies.
Yeah.
That's what you do. You move bodies. You jump for the ball. You fight for the ball on the ground, but you move bodies.
Yeah.
And it's very effective. And of course, they did it without Dupont, which probably proved just a little bit, because I think they would be almost becoming just a little bit too reliant on him. And of course, they have in Biel Biarri, to me, player of the tournament. absolutely electrifying winger.
And isn't it great to see a guy that doesn't have to be the size of a bus on the wing again,
Well,
with great footwork and real pace?
They've brought back the small winger in a way, the French. I mean, the South Africans were doing it too. You know, we always think of the South Africans as being 18 feet tall and all that sort of thing. Well, but they've got these diminutive back three players, and the French are doing it. And the French clearly have taken some leads from the way the Springboks play.
Yes, they have.
Stacking up their bench with forwards. And how long? Who's going to be the brave one who stands up and go, we need to legislate against this? I'm sure it won't be New Zealand, but someone will eventually, saying we have to have a maximum number of forwards on the bench. And France and South Africa will not be happy about that. But they've taken a few leads from South Africa, and that makes them a good team. And look, as I say, even if they are missing some of their real rock stars, it'll still be a worthy series, and it'll be a good lead into the Rugby Championship for the All Blacks.
Monday, I'm looking forward to round 6 already. You'll be doing Eden Park?
No, this week. Well, I was due to be going to Tonga this week.
Oh, of course, that's right. Yes,
and
now
sadly,
it's going to Pukekohe.
it's going to Pukekohe, so I'm going to Pukekohe with them. So,
that's
Chiefs
a bugger, isn't it? Yeah.
Moana. Oh no, that's cool. I would have loved to have gone there again.
Yeah.
And the idea of being there on a nice fine day. I don't know why they had to play the game at night. Why couldn't they have played that game in the afternoon?
Game, yeah.
No. I mean the game in Tonga, because the reason that they can't play it there is because the lights. Something wrong with the lighting.
So they could have played that in the afternoon.
If they'd been able to play that in the afternoon, then I would have been in Nuku'alofa on
a working holiday.
But it's a Friday game. But the delights of Pukekohe on a Friday night. I'll be there for that one.
Town of the future.
DSPN.